if you're the type of person who worries a lot, like me, then you got to watch this video. So we all live in this wonderful world, especially anyone who has the time, the technology and the capability to be sitting here on whatever day it is watching this video. We live in a wonderful world that is full of opportunities. But yet we spend a lot of our days worried about things that have happened in the past, things that are happening now, and worse, things that might or may not happen in the future. And we rob ourselves of the energy and the time and the joy of living in the moment. Bearing in mind that I'm not a qualified therapist, and I'm definitely not your therapist, and everything I say in this video you need to take with a grain of salt, because all I'm doing is sharing my personal experience, I want to just give you some tips and share some of the techniques and strategies I use to try and bring myself back to the present and stop worrying so much about what may not happen tomorrow. There's an old philosophy that goes somewhere along the lines of, if you spend your time dwelling on the past, thinking about what could have happened but didn't happen, and you live your life full of regret, it's called depression. And conversely, if you spend all your time looking ahead, always thinking about what's going to happen next, what's going to happen in the future, a day from now, a week from now, a month from now, your life is full of anxiety and stress. And the only way to be truly happy with yourself is to accept what has been and what will be, and live in the moment and focus on what is happening right this minute. Now, I bet you a lot of you guys are sitting here right now watching this video, but you're not really paying attention to what I'm saying. And that's okay, from the fact that, what I'm saying may not be resonating, but if it is, you're still allowing yourself in a way of that you're drifting ahead. Your mind is not focused on watching this video, but rather your mind is thinking about what you have to do next. Once this video is over, I'm going to have to iron some stuff to get ready for work tomorrow. I'm going to have to figure out what to make for dinner. I'm going to have to figure out what lunch to pack for the kids. I'm going to have to figure out all this, like I've got a dinner party next week, what I'm going to make. I need to visit some family somewhere. I'm going to have to organize some airline tickets or whatever. But your focus is not here. Your mind is not watching this video. You are somewhere over there somewhere, and you're basically just staring at the screen. Nothing is sinking in. What I'm saying isn't sinking in, and you're not actually giving that opportunity for the stuff I say to be sinking in, because you're not here in the moment. And this is something that I've been wrestling with for ages, and I'm finally at the point now when I'm starting to realize that there are certain moments in my day where I've lost the ability to stay in the moment, and I'm doing my best to fix it. Now, I'm not perfect by any means, and I find myself regularly, daily, hourly sometimes, telling myself, get my mind back onto this thing. Get your head back in the game. Stop thinking about stuff that might not happen. Basically, sometimes I even chastise myself and said, stop thinking about this dumb shit. It hasn't happened yet. You don't know what's going to happen. What is the point of spending all your time worrying about this stuff? Because do you know what happens when you're worried about stuff all the time? Your body tells you. Your body, it's always tense. Your muscles hurt. You get headaches. Your hands are like shaky. Your heart's racing. You feel sick in the stomach, like you got butterflies. And yes, when there's a big event, when there's something really there to stress about, these are perfectly understandable physiological responses to stress. But what happens when we spend our entire day worrying about this stuff, where the stuff hasn't even happened and there's not necessarily a potential for it to happen? What does it do to our mindset? What does it do to our level of confidence? What does it do to our ability to perform everyday tasks? What does it do in terms of allowing us to be happy with ourselves, staying in the moment, and also when we're with people that we care about, like family and friends? What allows us to stay in that moment rather than us just being there, but you know what I mean, not actually being there? Like during your daily commute, whether you're sitting on the train or sitting in the car, driving to work, what are you actually thinking about? Are you focusing on the road? Are you focusing on looking around to see who's around you? Are you reading a book? But are you actually reading a book? Are you actually listening to your Apple Music or Spotify? Or is it just there and your mind has drifted off somewhere else? And before you know, you've actually arrived at work and you can't even remember getting on the train. You can't even remember getting in a car because your mind hasn't actually been there. And we spend a lot of times missing out on experiences because we get home from something which is meant to be really good, and we don't even remember being there because we were thinking about something else. And how crazy is that? And it's something that We all do. Some of us do it more often than others, but it's something that we need to do our best to try and prevent, because that's not the way to live. That doesn't allow us to be happy, because we spend all our time pretty much being absent, MIA, literally from our own lives, because it's like we've detached ourselves and our brain is somewhere else, and we're just doing this because it's a mechanical thing, and I'm just staring at this camera. I'm not even sure what I'm doing. I'm not even sure what I'm saying, and I'm sure as hell know that in an hour I can't remember anything about what I said during this video, and that's not right. So what do I do to pull myself back every time this happens? Well, sometimes it works more effectively than others. I have been previously many times guilty of looking back and wishing that I did something, and now that I don't have the opportunity, and I find myself having to stop myself sometimes and say, look, yep, that didn't happen, but now we have to move on, and we need to try and make the best of stuff. And there's been loads of times, probably more than even looking back, where I'm always worried about what happens next, what happens if something happens. And the world doesn't help you do that. Even though I honestly believe that 99.9% of the world aren't out to get you, even though that 99.9% aren't actually looking out for you, but they're not actually out to get you. And there may be 10% of the people that you know who actually have your interest in mind, but most people are just neutral. Most people don't go out of the way to be nasty, to be mean, to hurt you, and all this kind of stuff. But we focus so much on the 0.1% that we lose entire perspective of what's happening. And that causes us to have an extraordinary amount of anxiety, because you know what? What does social media, what does the news do? They sensationalize stuff. Very rarely do you see good news stories, because good news stories don't sell. Good news stories, people, yeah, that's nice, and then they move on. But if you make everything dramatic, like even recently, we had some big storms here in Sydney, but instead of saying, just be careful, there's storms coming, just protect yourself, it's like, what was it called? It was like a cyclone bomb or something, that the world is going to end, everyone buckle up, no one goes out, and it just puts the fear of death into everybody. All this stuff, they sensationalize, and they focus on all this stuff that they know is going to like push people's buttons. War, finances, relationships, all this stuff where people just get super sensitive, because rightly so. World war is not a good thing. Having massive financial chaos where the share market might fall, everything is going to fall, all your superannuation is going to disappear. People are going to steal all your money because all this deep fake stuff, and people are going to steal all your passwords and all this kind of stuff. It is very frightening. But the news has a knack of sensationalizing this stuff so much that they turn frightening into absolutely horrifying. And that just pours fuel onto our fire of anxiety. So one of the things I do is I try not to look at the news too much. And yes, I know people say you've got to keep abreast of stuff and you don't shove your head up your butt and not pay attention to anything that's going on in the world, but you don't have to watch news 24 hours a day. Back then, a few months ago, when California had those terrible wildfires where all these houses were burned, and I felt bad for all of them, but I live in Australia. We have our own problems. I certainly don't feel good about what happened over there, but I kind of read about it, I kind of looked at some of the videos and stuff, and it made me feel anxious, because it just made me feel sad. But I made the decision at some point during that time to stop watching that stuff, because I knew that it wasn't going to help anybody by me being stressed, and it certainly wasn't going to help myself. And we tend to get ourselves anxious about stuff that, one, doesn't necessarily directly affect us, but we also find ourselves getting anxious about stuff that we see, which does affect us, but there's not really that much we can do about it. There's an old Chinese saying that my mum used to say, and it's called "judole sinsek," which is a Cantonese phrase which directly translates to, you only eat it once it's cooked and it's brought to you. And I think that's pretty profound. So over the last year or so, I've been thinking more and more about this whole anxiety, stress thing. And I'm starting to try and develop strategies for myself that can help me pull myself out of the rut when it happens. Like I said, I'm not perfect and I fail a lot of the time. But the first step for me was to recognize that I was finding myself going down that rabbit hole. And recognizing it means that you can do something about it, rather than just not even knowing that you're doing it and like you're just doom scrolling and no one tells you and you just keep going. So once you've decided that right now I'm spiraling and cascading into this horrible situation which isn't going to do me any good, what do I do about it? And that's not always easy to sort out. Some of the things I do now, which I do find helps a little bit, but I have a long way to go, is I try to exercise, because I find that exercising, whether you're lifting weights, you're doing some cardio, or you're going for a walk, or where you're just doing some stretching, it just makes you more in tune with your body and how it feels. Because when you stretch, you're tight because all your muscles are tight. And when you stretch, it feels great. And if you spend your time focusing on the stretches rather than focusing on the problem that was worrying you in the first place, that has to help, right? Other things that I've found to be helpful for me when I find myself in this state is journaling. Now, you've seen in the past videos that I have recently purchased a remarkable Paper Pro, and whilst I'm yet to be convinced of myself that it's worth the amount of money I paid, but the thing about it is it forces you, or it doesn't force you to, because you don't have to pick it up if you don't, but when you do it, it takes away all the distraction. There's not even a clock on this thing. So it's like a digital piece of paper, and I like digital stuff rather than pieces of paper. But there's no ability for you to distract yourself by going online and surfing anything, checking emails, messages, or going to social media. So you basically spend your time sitting there with a digital tablet and you're writing stuff down that you're feeling. And I find that helps. It's probably not as good as seeing a therapist, but I find that if I can vent on a piece of paper and sort of clarify my thoughts, that definitely helps the way I'm feeling. So I've been using that. I've been using some distraction skills too. Like, I know that nobody's perfect and you can't always be super on top of stuff, but distraction is really good when it comes to dealing with stress and anxiety that are minor. Once you make your brain think about something else, it doesn't have time to think about all the dumb shit that you shouldn't be worrying about in the first place. So lately, Nintendo Switch 2. Animal Crossing. I've just right now today purchased Fantasy Life I, so I'm going to try that out tonight. But anything that takes your attention, and before I had the Nintendo Switch 2, I was using the ROG Ally X and playing this Shadow of the Ring or whatever it's called, one of the Lord of the Rings games. And when I was doing that, I found that half an hour would go by, an hour would go by, and I haven't given a thought to the problem that I had in the first place. Your body is funny. Your body does stuff that becomes habitual and you don't even know you're doing it. I find myself sometimes in a situation when, this is one of my quirks, is that when I'm feeling stressed, my throat feels funny and I'm always saying, and I'm always coughing. There have been times in the past where I get paranoid, I think, oh, I've got something, I better test myself. But it's ironic that when your brain is focused on something else, where you're talking to someone, when you're playing these video games, where you're journaling, when you're exercising, the cough doesn't happen. You don't have any sensation that you need to clear your throat. You don't have any weird phlegm in your throat. So, I don't know, is it up here rather than here? And if you're the type of person who likes to share, talking to someone about it definitely helps. If you are very private, you may need to seek the help of a professional therapist, and most people should anyway, but if you're particularly don't like to share your stuff with people around you, even whether it's your family, whether it's your friends or whatever, having somebody to talk to is important, because you can't always solve things on your own. And one thing I found is having a distant perspective gives you a new context of what happened, because sometimes you're just so close to the situation that you can't see the forest from the trees, and all you need is someone who is not so close, so intimate in the problem, and they can see the solution straight away and you can't see it, even though it's right there staring you right in the face. And I find that talking to people in that situation is super helpful. So you've noticed that everything I said so far have been, I guess, positive strategies of managing your anticipation, your stress and anxiety. And at no place have I mentioned eating, drinking, smoking, doing drugs, or any stuff like that, because that's a trap that a lot of people fall into, because we think we can eat our way out of a situation. I'm an emotional eater. Putting on 20 pounds, eating ice cream and crisps when you feel upset isn't going to make your problem go away. It's actually going to make you feel worse, because now you've got a problem and you're also fat. Smoking, drinking, all these addictive habits which are bad for your body also don't take away your problem, but they potentially give you more problems later on. So these are not solutions. People who exercise, people who run off their anger, people who shout and dance in the rain, people who channel their frustrations in a positive way, it is a much better solution to resorting to things which gives you maybe some pleasure in the short term, that causes an extraordinary amount of damage, not only physically but emotionally. Because what happens when you emotionally eat? You think that you've had a really shitty day at work, everyone's been yelling at you, shouting at you, calling you an idiot. You come home, you eat a bucket of ice cream, you feel better for about 2 seconds, then you have a bellyache, and then tomorrow you go back to work, people shout at you again. What, are you going to go and get another bucket of ice cream? That is not a solution, so I don't subscribe to any of that stuff. So guys, just in conclusion, it's all about self-awareness. It's all about knowing what triggers you, what pushes your buttons, and working out strategies and techniques of how not to let these things trigger you and push your buttons. I know you're going to tell me that's easier said than done, and I know there's lots of things that pisses me off, frustrates me, makes me anxious, makes me sad, makes me angry that I have currently no ability to control. But I'm trying, and that's what I'm urging for you to do in this video, is that you try, and trying starts with recognition that you have an issue that needs to be sorted out. Whether it's appropriate for you to get professional help or not, really, I'm not in a position to give you that advice. You know when it's time that you cannot handle this problem. Well, actually, no, you don't, because sometimes we think we can handle stuff, but we actually can't. And it takes something really dramatic, like something huge, or someone to come and tell you, someone to slap you in the face to tell you you need help. And I hope that none of us get to that point, but that's a possibility that we need to be aware of. Finding techniques to bring joy in our lives. Creativity, for me, brings positivity. So even the fact I'm standing here or sitting here making this video about a topic which isn't exactly a laugh-a-minute sort of topic, it makes me feel good because it's bringing out my creativity, and I'm hoping that what I say will help you guys, and that makes me happy. And when I feel happy, I don't feel as stressed, I don't feel as anxious, and I need to fill my lives with more of this stuff so that every day becomes easier, every day becomes something that I look forward to, even though we all have what seems to be insurmountable challenges at times. But what are we going to do? Give up? We're going to throw the towel in and just hide under the bed and never come out? We can't. So we need to find ways of dealing with this stuff. And each day I'm trying, and I guess that's all I can do for myself. And hopefully this video has helped you feel like it's okay to express some of these feelings, because a lot of people feel like you shouldn't be saying stuff like this because it makes you weak, but it doesn't. It makes you aware, and it makes you prepared to accept help to make things better. Anyway, I hope you guys found this video helpful. Leave a comment below if you have any experiences that you'd like to share, and I'll see you next week in a brand new video. Bye.